So you're free to ask questions now.
Okay. Do you believe that every religion has the same goal, that is peace of mind?
Yes, I honestly feel that every religion at its core is basically trying to reach the exact same spiritual goal of peace and understanding for everyone. At the very least, every single religion should agree on this. All of these teachings sincerely advocate for love and consistently promote this kind of deep, lasting spiritual happiness. And we also sincerely hope for lasting peace and universal harmony for every living creature across this entire world. That is pretty much all I need to share about my idea.
I'm a student from Lund University. I have a question. You said about the we lost in the virtual life in the modern days, but how do you think about the online worship and online meditation in some virtual or cyber spaces?
Indeed, from the Buddhist perspective, this is actually an entirely illusory world within which we often do purely illusory things and ultimately obtain purely illusory results. This is exceptionally well known in Buddhism, as taught by the Indian master Shantideva in his classic work. Indeed, in the 9th chapter of his The Way of the Bodhisattva, he explains it in the exact same manner. Of course, the illusion in our current reality might be an illusion within an illusion, but if we have a kind heart and do good deeds in an illusory way within this illusion, there will still be results. Because if we do evil through illusory means, there will also be evil consequences just the same. You might wonder why I say this. There is a current statistic in the United States now, and according to what this statistic shows us, that every day in the United States there are a great many children. These are children who learn violent behaviors and aggressive tendencies through highly immersive virtual games. However, many leading experts and psychological researchers firmly believe that after these children grow up and enter adulthood, they may pose significant and unpredictable risks to the overall safety and stability of our society. Consequently, some of these interactive virtual games can also create very unsafe conditions and causes.
Hello. I was wondering if you could say anything about the relationship between positive, like strong positive and negative emotions, and the concept of harmony or balance.
Actually, I should say that I have relatively few negative emotions, whereas some people experience sudden outbursts of negative emotion, such as generating deep hatred or feeling extremely, extremely angry. Whenever a person begins to develop feelings of hatred right at that very moment with the people surrounding them, I am not sure if you have this specific habit here or not, but when some families argue or fight, they start smashing whatever is in front of them, regardless of what it is. In the end, they feel especially regretful themselves. Therefore, when we experience a negative emotion, we should calm our minds down. Actually, Buddhism talks about many negative emotions, such as feelings of jealousy and arrogance, intense and excessive anger, insatiable greed and desire, as well as all kinds of overly cunning and deceptive thoughts or feelings of deep depression and sadness. There are so many of these. So whenever these various emotions and mental states arise within our minds, at the very least, if you observe their true nature with mindfulness, they will gradually fade away. Right at this point, what you would call harmony, in fact, it is social harmony, which relies on harmony within families and individuals. Personal harmony means observing your own mind. A person with a tranquil and peaceful state of mind will experience a sense of calm and serenity no matter where they are. So our inner mind truly is the true creator of our entire reality. I've also noticed that some spiritual teachers and guides, they especially like to talk about negative things all day long. So most of their students will learn from them as well. And they too will gradually transform into people with negative emotions. Some people have a particular fondness for reading negative books. So by engaging in this habit, their own emotions also tend to become significantly more negative. This is also related to the educational environment.
I have a question. And I have the mic, so... if we're all happy being beggars, who will we beg from?
If we all became incredibly unhappy and miserable kings, what kind of life would we live? Have you ever stopped to wonder about that? But neither of these two situations is actually possible in our current reality.
Hello, I'll just speak in Chinese. I once watched a documentary about Nepalese Buddhism. The reporter's narration said that the more developed a country is, the closer it is to science and the further away from Buddhism. Conversely, in poorer countries, they are closer to Buddhism and further from science. What is your opinion on this statement? Thank you.
I do not quite see it that way. What we call our science should be the science of the mind. When considering external material-based modern technological science, if a country is highly developed in external material science, however they are quite far behind in inner science, then perhaps that country cannot truly be called a developed country.
Khenpo, I wonder, because introspection was something that was discarded in the 20th century in psychology. So what do Khenpo think about the role of observation of the mind in modern psychology? Is there a way to observe the mind in a scientific way?
Since the 20th century, it is true that our psychological science has nevertheless made remarkably swift, unprecedented progress. But looking at it from a scientific perspective, I am not entirely certain what you mean by science, regardless of whether it is what many schools are currently promoting and advocating for, constantly conducting experiments and using a wide variety of tools to conduct their experiments. Such experiments may have certain limitations when it comes to the inner mind. This is because the mind itself has neither color nor form. So observing or even experimenting with it using instruments may present certain difficulties.
I was thinking through directly observing, through meditation.
In fact, direct observation through meditation, which is a truly essential step. Now, if we look at things from a global perspective, this popular practice of mindfulness meditation is currently being practiced in many different countries across the globe, also in many different companies and schools. Absolutely everyone is taking part in it right now. And the profound impacts and transformative effects it produces are truly extraordinary and visually stunning to witness. When every single individual involved in the process takes a moment to sit in complete and total silence, quietly sits down in the specific way we commonly refer to as meditation, and uses their own mind to observe the intricate workings of that very mind. Actually, as Buddhist teachings explain, one's mind is not really all that complicated. If you use your own mind to observe itself, it becomes easiest to truly see what your mind is really like. In fact, it is highly recommended that this kind of meditation is best started with professional instructors at the very beginning, teachers who are truly experienced and possess deep personal insight, as well as spiritual mentors who can offer deep wisdom to provide necessary guidance. Of course, there are several distinct levels to it. If it's at the highest levels, then guidance from someone who is enlightened is needed. If such high standards are not required, only for our daily lives, there are some practices that can help relieve your stress and bring a sense of peace and tranquility and help to eliminate some negative emotions, allowing your emotions a natural flow to be released continuously. As for these specific methods, you should, for example, in the morning after waking up, sit for about 10 to 15 minutes to 30 minutes or so, and just before you go to bed at night, you can also sit quietly and relax for 10 to 30 minutes, or even just 5 minutes. If you keep doing this every single day of your life, you will find that your quality of life will definitely improve in many wonderful ways. Moreover, whenever we take the time to sit down and meditate together, it's best to know what your own mind is. You don't necessarily need to have any religious label. That's not required at all. What you must do is observe your own mind through your mind itself. If you come to know your own mind, perhaps in your daily life, this seems like a very troublesome thing to do. But for those who practice observing the mind, it is actually very easy.
About the terms of enlightenment, if it's possible to explain that in psychological terms?
In psychology, it seems there is no such term as enlightenment. At most, it's about understanding, clarity, or something similar. However, According to many ancient and modern spiritual teachings, true enlightenment should actually be like this. I once personally knew an enlightened practitioner who was kept inside a prison cell, yet every single time that he interacted with them, he regarded all the prison guards on duty during that period as if they were his closest friends. Even when some of those very same guards began to beat him severely, he still experienced no feeling of physical pain whatsoever within his body, nor did he ever hold any single trace of resentment toward them. Quite the opposite was true. He felt a deep, incomparable love for them. Even during those difficult times when he frequently found himself lacking even the most basic food and sustenance, he never wavered. It seemed that even in the difficult process of going without any food or physical nourishment, he experienced a profound sense of endless and lasting enjoyment. So, for those who have truly and deeply come to know and fully awakened to the inner workings of their own minds, in fact, if we try to describe it in words, it may sound rather pale. Regardless of whether we choose to employ the language of psychology or other religious traditions, it is still found to be quite inadequate. However, once we finally truly grasp and experience it for ourselves, we may understand. An ancient saying goes, just as only the person drinking the water knows whether it is warm or cold, when one attains realization, one understands it clearly. Just like when we drink water, whether the water is hot or cold, just like the person drinking the water knows it perfectly well. There are also other beautiful metaphors, like the saying, a mute person tasting sugar. Some realizations, when expressed in words, are truly difficult to fully convey. I once studied under a certain teacher who was known as His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche. He was truly an enlightened being whom I personally witnessed in my life. Sometimes when he composed treatises or wrote certain books, it was honestly incredibly challenging for us to keep up with our note-taking. It was like a flowing stream, and everything had to be captured and recorded directly. Wisdom naturally manifests in our realization. Indeed, sometimes it's very hard to put this into words. Some experiences that I have personally witnessed. With our remaining time, please ask your questions quickly. One person, one question, and I'll answer just as fast. Otherwise, we only have 10 minutes left now.
Yes, I have. I'm interested in Khenpo's views about the luminous mind, and I wonder about if you reach insight and you reach the luminous mind. Is it like one time and you are there, or is it layers then that you can get deeper and deeper into and always develop the luminous mind?
Yes, it happens layer by layer. It's like looking at the moonlight. The closer you get, the clearer it becomes.
Okay, could you tell us, please, what the life of a Buddhist devotee is like, what the life of a Buddhist monk is like, and what's the difference you can tell, you can say about the life of the way of Buddhist life, their spirituality, and the Occidental culture lives it?
Living the monastic life means shaving one's head completely bald and wearing very distinctive, traditional and somewhat unconventional attire. But internally, we're basically the same as everyone else. We can talk privately later.
So in Sweden, we might be the happiest country, but we have also a lot of suicide rates. And one of the huge issues in Sweden is anxiety. And so I just want to ask you about anxiety. What is your view on what anxiety is, and how can we get rid of it? And is there something in Sweden we're doing wrong? Because anxiety is almost like the middle name of every person.
Actually, I'm very interested in anxiety, but due to time constraints today, it's a bit difficult. However, many people say that it has something to do with the weather here in Sweden, but I don't really think so, because here in Sweden and in the West in general, there are also many philosophers and thinkers. So if we can really grasp and understand ourselves well, and if we can truly understand and carefully adjust the state of our minds, I think there wouldn't be any suicide anywhere in the world, nor would there be any psychological illnesses. For example, among the thousands or tens of thousands of people studying Buddhism with me, you almost never see cases of suicide.
This year, many of my dreams come true. Yeah, I was wondering, I want to know what's the meaning of karma. Yeah. Can you explain it in short?
Speaking of cause and effect, there was a pair of twins, but the two of them had very different life circumstances, yet both of them had a remarkably high sense of happiness. What could be the reason for that? Many scientists and experts believe it is linked to their genes, but we see it as their karma or past deeds, because their genes are connected to many aspects. Another scientist thinks this is unreasonable. Therefore, it is very necessary for us to understand that any happiness is not just about the present moment. Every effect must have a connection with its cause. This is known as karma.
I don't demand a long answer to this question, but how do you personally meditate?
As for myself, when I travel, I rarely find the time to meditate, mainly because I get tired and sometimes have to deal with jet lag. But when I am at Larongga, I meditate for 30 minutes in the morning upon waking. I also practice again before bed at night. During the day, I am quite busy. I don't meditate much. But usually, for nearly 30 years, almost every single morning, right after getting up, I have hardly ever missed a short daily meditation session. However, when traveling, it's difficult, and sometimes, even if I want to meditate, I can't, or I drift off.
Hello, I would like to ask, what is your perspective on rationality and romance? Is there actually any meaningful connection between the two?
As a matter of fact, many young people in this day and age, although they often say they truly want to live a deeply romantic life, but as for what romance really is, honestly, some people do not even truly know themselves. Lighting a candle at night, listening to some music, dancing, or enjoying a quiet drink together, many people view all of that as romantic. But true romance is actually something much deeper, where, in a more traditional sense, people have a rather unique way of telling the story of this culture and expressing all of its rich depth in a truly distinct manner for us today. Whether you go to Paris or England, places considered highly romantic by the whole world, if you go yourself, you'll clearly understand what romance really means. You will understand it very well yourself. So I believe life needs both rationality and romance. You could say that everyone lives a romantic life. It's just that it hasn't been called that. Everyone says it that way. Back when I was living at our quiet monastery, we frequently had no electricity at all. During the long winter months, whenever the power went out, we would light a single flickering candle at night. Then we would sit together to eat something very simple and just listen to the peaceful sounds of Buddhism. I often told some of my classmates that if people from other cultures saw this way of life might seem very romantic and meaningful to them. When I went to Paris before, I deliberately went to some of their streets and I asked what the meaning of romance was. But when all was said and done, I still didn't get a truly satisfactory answer. Now, in China, there's a place called Lijiang, and many people say it's also an incredibly romantic city. Some time ago, when I was doing some translation work, I actually went there to have a look for myself, but I still couldn't quite feel the true meaning of romance. All I heard was extremely noisy music. Maybe it's because I'm a monk, and I can't experience a romantic life.
Okay, thank you. So with these words, I would like to thank the audience and particularly Khenpo for a great talk. Thank you.
Thanks. I've been to many schools, but the learning atmosphere at this school is really good. I'm especially grateful to all of you.